Hi boys and girls, I have a few more comparison bar problems to work on with you. I'm hoping that you're able to join in more with these two problems and you're feeling more and more confident. And just remember that we'll continue to work on them next week and I'll sprinkle them in every week after that, because the more you work on with these, the better you're going to feel about them. And I really do hope that you're finding them as fun as I do. So remember, we are comparing numbers and we're seeing which number is larger, which number is smaller, who has more in a problem, who has fewer. Because that's what we do with comparing things. When we compare things, we're finding how they're the same and how they're different. And this is what our comparison bar drawing will look like. And we're working on understanding our math problem, labeling our bars, putting in our answers, and solving them. The problem that we're going to work on today, it's not a candy problem with Mara and Emmy. It's not a washing dishes problem with Mr. and Mrs. Peroni. It is actually a problem with Mr. Nelson and Mr. LeBeau. Here it goes, mathematicians. Let's read the problem. Mr. Nelson ran 10 laps around the gym. Mr. LeBeau ran 8. Now, before I go any further, I'm wondering if your head is already saying things like, oh, Mr. Nelson ran 10. That's more than Mr. LeBeau. He ran 8. Oh, Mr. LeBeau ran fewer. Mr. Nelson ran more. I'm wondering if those things are just already popping to your head as you read. And the question here is, how many fewer laps did Mr. LeBeau run? So remember, mathematicians, a really good strategy is to read the problem over again and also to read it so you can hear it out loud. So maybe read the problem with mom or dad, have them, or you read it out loud to yourself. So let's read it again. Mr. Nelson ran 10 laps around the gym. Mr. LeBeau ran 8. How many fewer did Mr. LeBeau run? Okay, so we've got a good start. We've read the problems 2 times. We're understanding what's going on. So now it's time to draw our, oh, actually, you know what we should do first? Let's see if we can find the word more or fewer, and let's circle the question. So I see how many fewer did Mr. LeBeau run. So that's telling me, oh, I can use my comparison bars. And then the answer that we have to come up with has to be the answer for this. How many fewer did Mr. LeBeau run? All right, so let's draw our comparison bar sketch. Okay. We have the longer or larger bar on top, just like on our math mountain. We have the larger number on the top of our mountain. We have the larger number at the top on the top bar. We have a shorter bar underneath, and then we have the, say it with me, awesome oval. So we know that our bigger number goes on top and our number partners go on the bottom. And remember the tip from last time, we know the number that's going to go in here is always going to be how many more or how many fewer. Another thing that you really should do with comparison bars, you know, is to label the bars so you don't forget what the bars are for. So the top bar is going to be for whoever ran more laps. And the bottom is whoever ran less. So let's see if we already have those numbers or if that's one of the ones we have to figure out. Mr. Nelson ran 10 laps. Mr. LeBeau ran 8. That's really clear to me. I see Mr. Nelson ran more, so I'm going to put an N for Nelson at the top. It tells me that Mr. LeBeau ran 8. I know that 8 is fewer or less than 10, so I'm going to label this with the L. It tells me how many Mr. Nelson ran. It tells me 10 right up here in the problem, so I can plunk it right into my comparison bar. It tells me that Mr. LeBeau ran 8, so I can put that right into his bar. What it's not telling me is how many fewer Okay, so we do not know awesome oval. So now, boys and girls, you need to come up with a strategy to figure out what this number is. One of the things that we worked on the last time was using the counting on strategy to figure out what number goes here in this number pair. So let's try it. Let's put 8 in your head and count up to 10. Let's do it together. Ready? 8, 9, 10. 2 fingers. It took me 2 counts to get up to 10. So very quickly, I know how many fewer did Mr. LeBeau run? 2 laps. He ran 2 laps fewer. Laps is our label. It's not candy like the last time. It's not dishes like the last time. This story problem is about laps. This question is saying how many fewer laps did Mr. LeBeau run? And we got 2 using our counting on strategy. Some of you may have felt more comfortable to figure out your number pairs and what they and the number pairs that got you to the total. So some of you may have done 8 plus, this is the one I don't know, equals 10. And some of you may feel more comfortable with subtraction and said 10. Take away the 8 is going to give me that missing number. It doesn't matter which of these strategies you used, we all got 2 laps. And that's why I think math is really neat, because yes, there's one correct answer, but there's lots of different ways to get to that one correct answer. And all of our brains work differently. I really like the counting up strategy. It just works for me. But I know there's some of you in class that when we were working this year, you really liked addition and finding that missing number pair. And some of you, you were always drawn to subtraction. Your brains always wanted to do the subtraction strategy. It's fine. All strategies, they led to one correct answer. Very nice job. Let's try another one. Here we go, mathematicians, let's read. Mrs. Edborg sang 7 fewer songs. Oh my gosh, the first sentence, 7 fewer. I bet that's going to go in awesome oval. Mrs. Edborg sang 7 fewer songs than Mrs. Nickel. Mrs. Nickel sang 15 songs. How many songs did Mrs. Edborg sing? All right, so right away, boys and girls, I see 7 fewer. I know I can use my comparison bars. I'm going to circle my question here because it's really important that I remember this is the only question I have to answer, right? I have to know how many songs are Mrs. Edborg sang. So now that I'm ready, I'm going to draw my comparison bars. I have my long or larger bar on top. Going to go right to the middle here. I'm going to have my smaller or shorter bar on the bottom. And I'm going to have, say it with me, my awesome oval. Just picture, boys and girls, this is like your math mountain here. Do you know already whose name is going to be up here? Is it going to be Mrs. Edborg with more songs or Mrs. Nickel with more songs? Let's take a look and see if we know who sang more. It says Mrs. Edborg sang 7 fewer. If she sang 7 fewer, fewer means less, then we know that Mrs. Edborg, I'm going to do E for Edborg, would be down in the smaller bar. And we know that N, Mrs. Nickel, is going to be on the top bar. We also know that awesome oval, this is where your more or fewer number goes. So now that we know that, let's try to plunk in our numbers. It says Mrs. Edborg sang 7 fewer. It doesn't tell me how many she sang. We just know she sang 7 fewer. So I'm going to put a question mark right here in Mrs. Edborg's box because it didn't tell me how many she sang. It did tell me she sang 7 fewer, so I can put the 7 right here in the more, fewer, awesome oval. It also said Mrs. Nichols sang 15 songs, so I can plunk that right up here. If you're wondering how did she know so quickly where to put Mrs. Nichols' number and where to put Mrs. Edborg's question mark, it's because I labeled them. Labels are so important to remind you of what you're working on. These problems can get so long, I might forget if I didn't label them. So now, friends, it's time to solve this problem. As I told you before, one of my best strategies is the counting on strategy when I don't have one of the numbers in the pair. So why don't we try that first? We have a 7 and we have to count up to 15. Let's do it together. Ready? 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I have 8 fingers up. I counted up 8 times. And yes, it is okay to use your fingers. It helps you keep track. All right, boys and girls, so we just figured that this number here is 8. And what we're trying to solve is how many songs did Mrs. Edborg sing? She sang 8 songs. We label that with songs so we know that that's what the 8 means. Not 8 candies, not 8 dishes, not 8 laps around the gym, but 8 songs. Some of you, I know, probably wanted to add the 2 numbers in the pair to get 15. So some of you might have said, Mrs. Edborg songs plus the 7 fewer give me 15. Some of you may have solved it through this addition. Some of you may have taken Mrs. Nichols' 15 songs, subtracted 7 fewer, and come up with 8, the number we're missing. Again, which of these you use, it doesn't matter. Many strategies for one answer, which is 8. Boys and girls, please remember when you're working with these problems, the checklist that I sent home with your parents, you can have this checklist next to you as you solve these problems and check off each step as you go. And that will help lead you to the answer in a very organized, efficient way. And also know, boys and girls, that I'll be sending more of these in the weeks to come, and practice will get you better. It's just like practicing lacrosse helps you to be a better lacrosse player. Practicing dance helps you become a better dancer. Practicing your viola or violin or string instrument helps you to become better, right? Practicing your reading, become a better reader. Practicing your math, become a better mathematician. Oh, and let's be practicing our writing. I know that one can be a struggle for us. Practicing your writer helps you become a better writer. So boys and girls, I hope this video helped you a little bit more with your comparison bar problems. I'll see you when we Zoom. You can post a note to me in our teams, or just have mom or dad or you shoot me an email. But we're going to get through this together. But boys and girls, you're great mathematicians. You're all so smart. You can do this. All right, until next time.